Since time immemorial, human beings have been utterly fascinated by things that they never truly understood. These include forces of nature like hurricanes and volcanoes, to giant animals, bizarre weather patterns, and more importantly, darkness. It is no secret that humans fear the dark, or perhaps things that lurk in the dark. Ever since we perfected electricity, we have tried our best to stay away from this darkness and prevent large predators from taking us by surprise. And with the wonders of the modern day, we have managed to eliminate the darkness almost entirely. Almost. Yet, in the comforts of our homes, after twilight has settled in, we are still somewhat hesitant about places like attics and basements, even though we are sure that there are no predators in there. So, what unnerves us about the dark so much? Well, for starters, our parents or grandparents certainly introduced us to quite intriguing tales about devils and ghosts, and the mainstream media has benefited from these views. Just take a look at the number of conjuring movies that have been on the market. But how well founded are these fears? Our fear of the paranormal and especially of ghosts. Are they even real? And if they are, what causes them? Today, let's take a brief look into the history of ghosts and hey, welcome to Morbid Curiosity. Ghost comes from the English word ghast, which means to terrify or frighten. In fact, one of the earliest examples of ghosts come from the good old Holy Bible, in which a disguised King Saul as the witch of Endor summoned the spirit, or ghost, of Samuel. Since then, the theme has been found in numerous cultures ranging from Rome, where a shackled ghost was mentioned in the writings of Pliny the Younger, to the Yuri of Japan. Pliny the Younger mentions a haunted house in Athens, which had been bought by the philosopher Athenodorus. Knowing that the house was supposedly haunted, Athenodorus intentionally set up his writing desk in the room where the apparition was said to appear, and sat there until late at night when he was disturbed by a ghost bound in chains. He followed this ghost outside, where it indicated a spot on the ground. When Athenodorus later excavated the area, a shackled skeleton was unearthed. The haunting finally ceased when the skeleton was given a proper burial. Now, if we move a bit in time, towards the unholy medieval Europe, one would see the ghost fall into two broad categories. Number 1, the soul of a departed person, and number 2, a demon. Number 1 is pretty much straightforward. It is the jolly old soul of a person who has passed away, but finds themselves unable to truly move on. These are the ghosts mentioned in the staple haunting cookbook. They are harmless, for the most part, and are more inclined on minding their own business. These apparitions tend to linger at places that had significant emotional values attached to them while they were alive. For example, a park would be a place they frequented while they were in the realm of the living, and hence, their spirit would love to settle down there after their death. But if something ghastly took place, like a murder, then the same park would be visited by the spirit of the departed, seeking vengeance. So ghosts are kind of complicated in that way, but still, they are far gentler than the alternative, demons. Demonic spirits are, as mentioned by Ed Warren in The Conjuring, is something that never walked the earth in human form. These spirits are harbingers of death and worse. They tend to suck the happiness out of people, and once they latch on to a host, they would make the lives of everyone involved with that person literal hell. Demons are described as forever hungry, supernatural forces that need to constantly feed off people's emotion, especially fear, to sustain themselves. After all, fear is supposed to be the strongest emotion out there. In fact, almost all cultures and major religions talk about a dark spirit that would love to torment people for a living. And no, in this instance, we are not talking about the federal government. Back to the good old Middle Ages, we have phantom knights, animated carriages, and even full-fledged ghost armies. One peculiar case from the Middle Ages that revolve around the paranormal is of the Hausker Castle, a fortress deep inside the woods of Czechia. It was constructed in the 13th century as a containment facility. Yes, you heard that right. Not as a residence, but as a containment facility. You see, right where the castle is situated, hundreds of years ago, there was a giant chasm that went all the way down to the bowels of the earth. It is not really sure how far the rabbit hole went, but during the day, the nearby villagers would report unearthly shrieks coming from the pit. But even worse, at night, winged creatures would arise from the unholy abyss and drag men and animals back into their black lair to make a midnight snack out of them. These reports soon reached King Ottokar of Bohemia, and he had the fortress built to contain the creatures. The castle was occupied by the Germans in the Second World War, where many famous generals tried to harness the powers of hell. However, the fall of the regime in 1945 would say that they were not successful in their spiritual quest. None of their spiritual quest. Ghosts in the modern era lost their significance after the horrors of the Second World War. For decades, the spirits were left at peace, and the pranks of the poltergeists around the world went unnoticed until the rise of the Borley Rectory in the United Kingdom. The case sprang into spotlight after the investigation by Ed and Lorraine Warren. Borley Rectory is often said to be the most haunted place in the UK. Extensive paranormal research was conducted in the site in the late 1930s by Harry Price, a renowned paranormal investigator. He started these investigations after the occupants of the house reported that they were seeing ghostly coaches driven by headless men, phantom nuns, and other strange lights at night. As the haunting began to get physically abusive, the occupants raised a cry for help, and Price arrived. After going through church records, he made the astonishing claim that the place was haunted by many spirits, but the most prominent and vengeful one, it seems, was that of a nun who had been murdered there. Anyway, the rectory burned down in 1939 and was completely demolished by 1945. Ed and Lorraine Warren visited the site in 1976 and encountered the spirit of the nun firsthand. The same nun is believed to be the inspiration behind the antagonist in the 2018 feature film, The Nun. Speaking of Ed and Lorraine Warren, they played a significant role in reviving the paranormal in the early 1970s. The duo investigated some famous cases like the Amityville, the Enfield, Perron family, and the Arnie Johnson haunting. All of their cases are well documented and have been adapted into a Conjuring film series as well. A common trait that was found in all four of the hauntings is that the ghost possessed people and prompted them to maim and kill others around them. In the case of Arnie Johnson and Amityville, they unfortunately succeeded and people lost their lives. But one can equally argue on the fact that all the aforementioned cases are, strictly speaking, cases of demonic hauntings rather than ghostly. Another famous paranormal haunting in the modern times comes from the Ammons family haunting, where a family in Indiana was spooked out of their wits in 2011. They ended up fleeing the house in 2012, barely a year after moving in. The family claimed that flies would frequent the house, and a shadowy figure was spotted inside the house on multiple occasions. After making a brief documentary, the house was finally demolished in 2016. Even today, in the day and age where humans are on the verge of colonizing Mars, carrying out remote space operations and underwater research, the question of whether ghosts exist or not lingers. It has persisted over the centuries, and no clear conclusions have been found. Those skeptics claim that ghosts are nothing more than figments of our imagination. People who have witnessed them firsthand beg to differ. However, it seems that for the time being, the secrets of the spiritual realm would remain unraveled.